one day and just took very careful data. What time did they buy these milkshakes? What were they wearing? Were they alone? Did they buy other food with it? Did they eat it in the restaurant or drive off with it? It turned out that nearly half of the milkshakes were sold before 8 o'clock in the morning. The people who bought them were always alone. It was the only thing they bought, and they all got in the car and drove off with it. So to figure out what job they were trying to hire it to do, we came back the next day and stood outside the restaurant so we could confront these folks as they left milkshake in hand. And in language that they could understand, we essentially asked, "Excuse me, please, but I got to sort this puzzle out. What job were you trying to do for yourself that caused you to come here and hire that milkshake?" And they'd struggle to answer, so we'd then help them by asking other questions like, "Well, think about the last time you were in the same situation, needing to get the same job done, but you didn't come here to hire a milkshake. What did you hire?" And then as we put all of their answers together, it became clear that they all had the same job to do in the morning, and that is they had a long and boring drive to work. And they just needed something to do while they drove to keep the commute interesting. One hand had to be on the wheel, but somebody had given them another hand and there wasn't anything in it. And they just needed something to do while they drove. They weren't hungry yet, but they knew they'd be hungry by 10 o'clock, so they also wanted something that would just pump down there and stay for that morning. Good question. What do I hire when I do this job? You know, I've never framed the question that way before, but last Friday I hired a banana to do the job. Take my word for it, never hired bananas. They're gone in 3 minutes, you're hungry by 7:30. If you promise not to tell my wife, I probably hire donuts twice a week, but they don't do it well either. They're gone fast, they crumb all over my clothes, they get my fingers gooey. Sometimes I hire bagels, but as you know, they're so dry and tasteless. Then I have to steer the car with my knees while I'm putting jam on them, and then if the phone rings, we got a crisis. I remember I hired a Snickers bar once, but I felt so guilty I've never hired Snickers again. Let me tell you, when I come here and hire this milkshake, it is so viscous that it easily takes me 20 minutes to suck it up that thin little straw. Who cares what the ingredients are? I don't. All I know is I'm full all morning and it fits right here in my cup holder. Well, it turns out that the milkshake does the job better than any of the competitors, which in the customers' minds are not Burger King milkshakes, but it's bananas, donuts, bagels, Snickers bars, coffee, and so on. But I hope you can see how, if you understand the job, how to improve the product becomes just obvious.
So hopefully that was informative and slightly entertaining. Rather than unpacking the job to be done framework in any level of detail, what I'm going to do is refer you to that link. It's an excerpt from a book called The Innovator's Toolkit. It's really, really incredible. I don't know how many words it is, maybe 1,000, but it's basically a practical, step-by-step approach to how to apply the job to be done framework. Really, really useful. If anyone's writing it down and hasn't finished, let me know, or taking a picture or whatever. As soon as everyone's done, I'll move on to the next screen.
Excuse me, would it be possible to get the slides after?
Sorry?
Would it be possible to get the slides after?
Absolutely. Yeah, not a problem at all. Ooh. Moving on and sending those through later. So, when I was first introduced to the Jobs to be Done framework, I was actually working with one of Australia's biggest banks, and we were working with a group of about 300 product managers. One of the things that they were really, really struggling to do was design and implement product and take it to market and actually get any type of meaningful engagement, any meaningful usage. And so we ended up applying the Job to be Done framework and, added a couple of tweaks and bits and bobs in between. And I'm going to go there later, but this or a version of this is probably something that anyone that either works in marketing, product, engineering, design is somewhat familiar with. The thing that you're probably familiar with is user stories. As a user, I want so that I can. One of the problems with user stories, even if they're the synthesis of really good solid research, is that after you go, I want, so that I can, you realize that you're assuming implementation detail. I want solution. And it's rare that we come up with the right solution that early in the product development lifecycle. And so something that's kind of been surfaced over the last 3 or 4 years, it's fairly new, is the concept of job stories. And I've got an example up here. The thing that job stories capture that align to the job to be done framework really, really effectively is first of all the situational context. So what position am I in when I'm choosing to hire or fire a product or service in Clayton Christensen's language? They capture the actual need, and they also capture the motivation, whether that be intrinsic, extrinsic, or both. And so, again, this is probably something that I can send out, but if you're struggling with user stories, if you feel like they're not giving you enough context, if you feel like they're assuming implementation detail before you feel like you have the right solution, give job stories a try. If you type in job stories into a quant search, not Google, quant search, there'll be some great results, probably from Intercom or Alan Clement on Medium. I'd really advocate checking those out. So now we get to the crux of it, the problem we're solving framework. And this is something that, again, if you go to that link that I'll be able to send out later or when I provide the slides, this is kind of touched on. And the problem we're solving framework is really a mechanism to identify the propensity people have to change their behavior. So how likely are they to use the thing that you're trying to design? And the simple way that we do that is through a Likert technique, by basically understanding how important something is to someone, simply on a scale of 1 to 10, and how satisfied they are with the way they're currently getting that thing done. So how important is it that you're full until lunch and you're occupied on your way to work, versus how satisfied are you with the way you're currently fulfilling that? And that could be a Snickers, it could be a banana, it could be a donut, or it could be a milkshake. And we'll just unpack that a little bit further. What I've done here is put together 2 really, really simple questions. And with Julie and James in the room from Yoti, this will probably resonate fairly strongly. How important is it to you that you're able to verify who you are when making online purchases? Now, again, that identity assertion isn't the only thing Yoti does, but I'll let James or Julie or someone cover that off at a different time. But it's something that we often have to do. In a MyData world, ideally, there's a really seamless way to do that. And solutions are definitely starting to emerge, but at the moment, there's a lot of friction. And so you'll see the answer there. It's super important. I do everything online, and often the things I do online are really time sensitive. So it takes me 5 minutes to prove who I am. That sucks. So we got a 10 for that. Really, really important. We asked, how satisfied are you with the way you're currently able to verify who you are when making online purchases? These are the types of comments. It really sucks. I either log in with Facebook and give up all of my information, or I spend ages filling out forms. And of course there are other options than that, but that's basically the synthesis of what we got back. And so they said we're about a 2. Okay, cool. So across every answer that we get, we average that out. What we then do is we plot that on a really, really simple looking graph. This is a great way to articulate to teams, to stakeholders, the potential value that the jobs to be done of the customer segments you are targeting might have. And it's another way to prioritize investment, prioritize research effort, etc. And so where this one fell was right over here. 10 importance, 2 satisfaction. Quite interesting. This is the thing that I think is probably the most interesting about the jobs to be done framework. And again, I think Clayton Christensen articulated it really beautifully and probably more humorously than I will. But it goes something like this. The company that he was working for, I'm going to assume, was McDonald's, but it's just a fairly bold assumption. And they believed that their primary competitors, because of the way that they approached research and product development, were the other fast food chains. But it turns out the insight is that it's actually totally different products that can be bought from stores that McDonald's wouldn't have traditionally considered a competitor. And once you start unpacking the jobs to be done framework, and again, when I send that out, go to the link from Stratogen, really, really interesting, it unpacks it in detail. What you might notice is that the competitors who you currently view as your primary competitors, they may be your competitors, but there might be others. And there are some really interesting insights that could potentially emerge from applying this approach. What we're going to do is dive into a really, really simple activity. So, remember how we had the two questions? What we've done is taken those questions and plotted all of the answers out. Importance, satisfaction. There are 12 answers for each. What I'd like everyone to do it on your phone if you're, still able to do basic arithmetic, unlike me. Do it in your head, whatever. But what I want you to try and do is figure out what the average of these 12 numbers are, and the average of these 12 numbers are, and just note them down. So what we're going to do after that is plot them on the problem we're solving graph. And what we'll try and figure out is if we do have a problem we're solving, and that can help potentially prioritize effort, investment, time in that direction. So I don't know, how long does everyone want? Maybe a minute? Is that okay? Lack of feedback says that's okay.
Okay.
Real quick. Good? Alright. So, same piece of paper, if you have a piece of paper. I'm really sorry if you don't. Paper was a scarce resource. So it's not a reflection of how I feel about you, it's just simply, scatter plot. It's kind of like the way marketing works currently, I just guessed. Draw this out, can be as rough as you like. It's just to kind of get the feeling. So if you can try and copy that to the best of your ability, hey manually, do that. And then, what I'd like you to do is plot the job to be done where it actually falls. What we'll end up with is a less busy version of that. Everyone who has a piece of paper has plotted it. From a user experience design standpoint, we're failing. I need feedback. Have we plotted it? Yes, excellent. All right. This is the question that I want you to ask yourself. Do we have a problem that is worth solving? And what that means is effectively this. Do people care enough about this problem or this job to be done to change their behavior? Because if they don't, it's probably not worth spending time on. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand it over to James.